Oklahoma country music superstar Toby Keith died last night after a 3-year battle with stomach cancer.
Everything you thought you knew about Toby Keith's life, his marriage, and his tragic death was just the tip of the iceberg. Toby's wife, Tricia, has opened up about who her husband truly was behind the lights and cameras. Theirs was a love story for the ages, but after Toby's tragic death, Tricia remained silent. However, we now know what Toby Keith, the woman who shared 40 years of her life with the legend himself, has to say, and her revelations are completely jaw-dropping. What exactly did she say about Toby and the life they shared together? Should we be worried? Was he a different man behind the scenes? And how does she feel about his legacy now that he's gone? Toby Keith's early life and journey. There's a side of Toby that so many people don't know about, and it's his life before all the fame and fortune. When you hear the name Toby Keith, most people instantly think about patriotic anthems, cowboy hats, red solo cups, and massive country hits. But there was more to him than all that, because this legend of country music came from a humble, working-class background. Before the fame, the fortune, and the sold-out stadiums, Toby was just a regular guy chasing a dream that almost didn't happen. That's right. Toby's path to the top wasn't smooth. It was full of struggle, rejection, and moments where he nearly gave it all up. But he didn't. And thank God for that, because country music would have never been the same. Toby Keith Covell was born on July 8, 1961, in Clinton, Oklahoma. However, he was raised in the heart of oil country. He grew up in Moore, Oklahoma, and this boy was country through and through. His dad, Hubert Covell, was a United States Army veteran and a blue-collar worker, while his mom, Carolyn, was all about keeping the family grounded. So from day one, he was taught the value of hard work, family, and grit. From the very beginning, Toby was into music. His grandmother had a supper club, where he first got to see live bands, and that's where the music bug bit him. Little Toby would watch those musicians and dream, but he also knew life was about responsibility. So after high school, instead of heading straight to Nashville to chase his music dream, he went to work in the oil fields. Toby Keith was literally a roughneck. He started as a derrick hand and worked his way up to operations manager. It was hard, dirty, exhausting work, but he did it to take care of his family. Still, the dream never died. Toby would work all day in the oil fields, but at night, he'd put on his boots, grab his guitar, and play in local bars with his band, the Easy Money Band. It was a grind. He played for almost nothing, sleeping in vans, hauling gear, and doing all the dirty work just to get one more chance to sing. He wrote songs constantly, songs about working men, heartbreak, America, and real life. Songs that no one in the industry was paying attention to yet. Then, in the mid-1980s, the oil industry began crashing, and unfortunately, Toby lost his job. And with a wife and kids to support, he had a decision to make. He had to either find another 9-to-5 job or go all in on his music. And this is exactly where the story gets interesting, because Toby decided he was going to chase the dream full-time. He played every honky-tonk and dive bar he could find. He began recording demos and mailing them to record labels in Nashville. And sadly, he kept getting rejected. Over and over and over again. But just when things were starting to look really dark, the miracle happened. And it happened in the most unexpected way ever. So one of Toby's fans, who just happened to be a flight attendant, believed in his talent so much that she gave his demo tape to an executive at Mercury Records who was on her flight. Talk about fate. That executive actually listened to the tape, heard Toby's voice, and he was convinced. And just like that, Toby Keith got a record deal. After years of struggle, someone finally said yes to him. And that was the beginning of a new dawn in his life. In 1993, at age 31, Toby released his debut single, Should Have Been a Cowboy. And it was an instant success. It hit #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and became the most played country song of the entire 1990s. The guy who was sleeping in vans and getting rejection letters a year before was suddenly everywhere. Toby didn't just step onto the country music scene. He kicked the door down. And from there, it was hit after hit. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, Toby dropped banger after banger. But what made him stand out wasn't just his voice, it was his attitude. He was rough around the edges, totally unapologetic, and completely real. He didn't care about Nashville politics or playing it safe. He made real music, and the fans loved him for it. Things got so good for him that in 2005, Keith started his own label, Show Dog Nashville, because he was basically tired of anyone telling him what to do with his music. But while his career was extremely eventful and impressive, behind all the glitz and glamour of fame and fortune, Toby Keith's personal life was just as eventful, and definitely not what you'd expect. Toby and Trisha's love story. Perhaps the most significant part of Toby Keith's personal life was his super beautiful love story with his wife, Trisha Lucas. If you thought country love songs were just a fantasy, think again, because the romance between Toby and Trisha wasn't just some whirlwind red carpet relationship. It was ride or die through thick and thin before fame and fortune even showed up. Trisha was the woman who believed in Toby before anyone else did. She saw the star in him when all he had was a guitar, a dream, and a job in the oil fields. And together, they built the kind of love story country songs are made of. It all started in Oklahoma, way back in the early 1980s. Trisha Lucas was a single mom working as a secretary at an oil company. She was young, independent, and just living her life. And that's when she met Toby. At the time, Toby wasn't a star yet. He was still a roughneck in the oil fields by day and a wannabe country singer by night. The two met at a local bar, and Trisha confessed that Toby was charming, confident, and funny. She also said that something about him just drew her in. She told People magazine, "I was 19 and he was 20. He was just one of those larger-than-life guys, full of confidence." They went on a date, then another, and before long, things got serious. Trisha saw more than just a man with a guitar. She saw a future. Now, let's be real. When Trisha and Toby first started dating, life was not glamorous. Money was tight. Toby was still out there in the blazing sun, working long shifts in the oil fields, while desperately trying to get noticed in the music industry at the same time. But Trisha, she never complained. In fact, she supported him 100%. She knew he had big dreams, and instead of telling him to be realistic and get a proper job, she encouraged him to keep going. In 1984, just a few years after they met, they got married. And it wasn't some huge celebrity wedding. It was a simple, small, and heartfelt ceremony. Of course, they didn't have a lot of money, but what they did have was love, and they were determined to build a life together. Now, here's something most people don't know. Toby adopted Trisha's daughter, Shelley, from her previous relationship. He stepped in as a father from day one, and that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of man he was. Later, they had 2 more children together. Crystal, born in 1985, who would go on to become a singer like her dad, and Stellan, born in 1997, who later became a businessman and stayed out of the spotlight. So at some point, Toby wasn't just a dream-chasing musician anymore. He was a husband and a dad of 3, who was still trying to keep food on the table and make it in the country music world. When Toby finally got his big break in 1993 with the song "Should Have Been a Cowboy," he and Trisha had already been together for nearly a decade. She had been through all the struggle, the rejections, the self-doubt, and the financial stress. And now, she was standing next to him as he skyrocketed to fame. Suddenly, Toby was touring the country, winning awards, and getting radio play. But surprisingly, he managed to stay grounded through it all, unlike most country music stars, and we have no one else to thank except his wife. But from day one, Trisha was never a fan of the spotlight. She didn't chase magazine covers. She had no interest in trying to be the perfect celebrity wife. Instead, she was all about being a mom, holding down the fort, and making sure their family stayed tight and strong. But here's the thing about Toby Keith. He wasn't just known for his beautiful love story with Trisha, or for his chart-topping hits and patriotic anthems. The man also stirred up some serious and heavy controversy back in the day. He clapped back at critics, found himself in some hot scandals, and stood his ground, like the unapologetic Oklahoma cowboy he always was. While some country stars tried to play it safe, Toby didn't care about being politically correct. If he had something to say, he said it loud, proud, and with a boot-stomping beat behind it. And that got him into some real messy situations over the years. Public feuds, political drama, media backlash, you name it. But through it all, Toby never backed down, and neither did his wife, Trisha, who stood by his side like the quiet, unshakable force she was. Toby's feuds and controversies. When you talk about one of the most infamous feuds in country music history, you definitely have to mention Toby Keith versus the Dixie Chicks. This one was completely messy, and it followed Toby throughout his career. It all started after the heartbreaking 9/11 incident. Toby was in his feelings, and he released the supercharged, ultra-patriotic anthem, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. That song was a straight-up battle cry. He wrote it just days after his own father passed away and the Twin Towers fell, and you could feel the anger in every lyric. However, while some bold lines in that song had some people cheering and feeling patriotic, it also had some cringing. But here's where it gets interesting, because Natalie Maines, lead singer of the Dixie Chicks, definitely wasn't feeling the song. In fact, she came out and publicly called the song ignorant. Her exact words were, "I hate it. It makes country music sound ignorant. It targets an entire culture, and not just the bad people who did bad things. You've got to have some tact." And that statement was the match that lit the fire. Toby was furious. He clapped back hard, saying Natalie didn't understand what it meant to be an American, or even a patriot. And instead of Toby and Natalie keeping this feud behind closed doors, they brought it into the public spotlight, and it got even messier. You see, it got so petty that Toby even went as far as putting Natalie's face on a screen at his concerts, morphing it with Saddam Hussein's as a political dig. And Natalie? She shot back by wearing a T-shirt with some weird words on stage. She never said what it stood for, but everyone could tell that it was aimed squarely at Toby Keith. It was ugly, and the media couldn't get enough of it. But the good thing was that while Toby caught major heat from the critics, his fans stood by him. So did the military. And so did his wife, Trisha, who quietly supported him through one of the messiest and most public blow-ups of his career. But that's not all. The truth is, Toby's intense patriotism earned him a huge following, but it also put a target on his back. Some critics called him a warmonger, saying his music was too aggressive. They claimed his lyrics stoked division and glorified violence. But Toby, he did not care. He made it clear that he had no regrets about the type of songs he wrote. His song, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, the angry American, was more like a fiery warning to enemies of the United States. The song hit #1 on the charts. It became an anthem, and Toby even performed it for military troops overseas, who saw him as a hero. But at the same time, it got him serious backlash. In fact, some radio stations even banned the song. Music critics called it jingoistic, aggressive, and unnecessarily violent. But Toby didn't hold back. He defended it tooth and nail, saying, "I knew it would be polarizing. I knew it would be a lightning rod, and I prayed about it. But at the end of the day, it was a battle cry for our guys to win and get back home safely and go do what Americans really do." But even with that explanation, the political spotlight locked on him, and it never left. Believe it or not, Toby Keith was invited to speak at the Republican National Convention multiple times, but he always said no. He didn't want to become a political puppet for any one party. However, in January 2017, Toby performed at President Donald Trump's inaugural concert, and it definitely sparked a whole new firestorm. He sang his biggest hits at the Make America Great Again welcome celebration, standing proudly in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Of course, critics pounced. Social media blew up, and people called him out. But again, Toby stood tall and made no apologies. He said, "I don't apologize for performing for our country or military. I performed at events for previous presidents Bush and Obama, and over 200 shows in Iraq and Afghanistan for the United Service Organizations." However, despite this statement, behind the scenes, the pressure was real. But guess who stayed right by his side through all that? Trisha. She was his rock through the media madness, keeping their family grounded while he stood in the fire. The truth is, Toby Keith was never the industry's darling. While other stars played the game by shaking hands, playing politics, and showing up to award shows, Toby wasn't interested in all that, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. He famously feuded with the Country Music Association and the Academy of Country Music, claiming they snubbed him repeatedly, even when his songs were topping charts and fans were selling out shows. Toby later told the press that the associations didn't like his style because he wasn't one of their boys. This feud was part of what motivated him to launch his own record label, Show Dog Nashville. And, of course, Trisha was in the background, supporting him while he went totally rogue. But that's not all. Even in his later years, Toby still caught heat. Some said his lyrics were outdated. Others accused him of playing to a specific political base. Media critics slammed him for being tone-deaf or too old school. But he didn't try to rebrand. He didn't water himself down. He stayed 100% unapologetically Toby. And Trisha? She kept handling the storm like a pro. She never made statements. She didn't go on talk shows. But insiders say she was the strategist, the planner, the one who always helped Toby stay 2 steps ahead. However, nothing could have prepared her for the intense and heartbreaking battle that lay ahead of her husband. The tragic diagnosis and loss. We all knew Toby as the tough guy, the Oklahoma outlaw, the boot-stomping, flag-waving country star who never backed down. But behind the scenes, he was fighting a battle that would eventually take everything out of him, a battle he kept quiet about for way longer than fans ever realized. Let's rewind to around late 2021 and early 2022. Toby had always been full of energy. Even into his 50s, he was still performing, still belting out lyrics, running across stages, and enjoying the moment with fans after the show. But then, all of a sudden, something seemed different about him. Fans at concerts began whispering about how he looked thinner and how he didn't quite have the same spark anymore. He started canceling appearances, interviews were postponed, tour dates got quietly dropped from schedules, and no official reason was ever given. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was enough for loyal fans to know in their gut that something was going on. Now, when it comes to celebrities suddenly disappearing from the spotlight, you know the rumor mill gets to work fast. Some gossip channels claimed he was burned out. Others said he was taking a break, or simply just rebranding. Some rumors even had it that he was retiring from music altogether. But then, the big whispers started, and they were all about his health. People started talking about how he looked frail in recent photos, and the fact that Toby and his family stayed silent about the entire situation only made the speculation grow louder. Then, out of nowhere, on June 12, 2022, Toby broke his silence on X and Instagram, and it caught the entire country music world by surprise. He posted a short, simple message. "Last fall, I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I've spent the last 6 months receiving chemo, radiation, and surgery. So far, so good. I need time to breathe, recover, and relax." And just like that, the truth was out. The reaction was overwhelming. Fans were in shock. They were heartbroken. However, they showered him with support by flooding the comments with love and prayers. Fellow artists couldn't believe it, and everyone felt like the wind had been knocked out of them. Toby had been fighting in silence for over 6 months. No sympathy tours, no pity posts, just grit and fight behind closed doors, with just the support of his wife, Trisha. Now it's pretty clear that Trisha has never been the flashy type. She didn't jump in front of the cameras. She didn't post updates or seek sympathy, but sources close to the family say she was by Toby's side, day and night, at every doctor's appointment, every chemo session, every moment of uncertainty. She kept the home together. She shielded their kids. She made sure Toby had peace, rest, and love, while the world didn't even know he was sick. However, things got worse because, let's face it, stomach cancer isn't just brutal. It changes everything. It affects the appetite, digestion, energy, and basically everything. Toby, who had always been big, strong, and full of fire, started to visibly shrink. By late 2022, when he appeared at a surprise event, fans were shocked at how much weight he had lost. His face looked sunken, he moved slower, and he looked tired. But he didn't let that get to him. He made sure to put a smile on his face and stay positive. Do you know that Toby was even thinking of getting back on the road after his treatment? Even when his body was clearly struggling, his spirit was still dreaming of standing on stage again. He once said, "I'm feeling pretty good. I'm thinking about bringing the band in and setting up, playing 2 or 3 days somewhere just to see if I can get through 2 hours. All I have to do is see if I can get through 2 or 3 nights of work and get a little break in this chemo, and we'll go back to work." That's what made Toby different. He didn't just want to go out quietly. He wanted to fight for his music, for his fans, and for his family. However, in December 2023, Toby Keith made his final public performances at a set of surprise shows in Las Vegas. He hadn't performed live in months, and no one expected him to return that soon. But he did, thin and pale, but determined as ever. He performed all the hits and poured his heart into every song. Fans later said it felt like he knew it might be his last show, and he gave it everything he had. It wasn't just a concert. It was a farewell, even if no one wanted to believe it. In the months after that show, Toby's condition worsened. He stayed mostly out of the public eye, spending quiet time at home with his family in Oklahoma. He was surrounded by love, his kids, his grandkids, and most of all, Tricia, who never left his side. Then, on February 5th, 2024, Toby Keith passed away at just 62 years old. The news sent a shockwave through the country music world. No one was ready. Fans cried. Artists paid tribute. And a legend was gone. Tricia released a short, emotional statement that would change everything we thought we knew about Toby. Tricia Lucas breaks her silence. On October 20th, 2024, it was meant to be a night of celebration. The Country Music Hall of Fame was holding its annual medallion ceremony, where country music legends receive the highest honor in the industry. But this year was quite different, because this time, one of the biggest names in country history, Toby Keith, was being inducted posthumously. Toby had passed just a few months earlier, and so to receive the honor was the woman who had loved him for more than 40 years. Tricia confessed that it was extremely sad that Toby didn't get the opportunity to get inducted into the Hall of Fame until he passed. However, she went on to say, "Toby, we know you know. You are in the Country Music Hall of Fame." When Tricia stepped up to the microphone to accept the honors, everyone got super emotional. She remembered how beautiful his soul was, how present, and how full of love he always was. She made it clear that there would never be another Toby Keith, and that his impact would outlive him. She also spoke about how much he loved his country and how patriotic he was, and the fans could definitely agree to this one. Indeed, Toby was loud, proud, unbothered by critics, and totally devoted to his country. She said he didn't care what anybody said. He was a patriot. He loved his country. Toby loved hard and lived big. He enjoyed everything he did. He had no regrets. One of the most emotional parts of her speech was when she spoke about how even after his death, she still meets people who wouldn't stop talking about how Toby greatly impacted their lives. Her words were, "People walk up to me randomly, and they shake my hand and say, 'You're Toby's wife, aren't you?' I say, 'Yes, I am.' They say, 'I miss him every day.' And I say, 'Me too,' and we're both crying." But Tricia didn't stop there. She also revealed how Toby stayed committed to making a difference in the world, not just living about it, even till the moment he passed. Trisha spoke about how proud he was of OK Kids Chorale, the home away from home he built for children with cancer. Even while he was secretly battling cancer himself, Toby was still thinking about others. Trisha said, "His music, his generosity, and his humanity will outlive not only us, but our children and their children." And realizing just how selfless Toby truly was brought tears to the eyes of people. In just a few minutes, Trisha Lucas did something no one else could. She brought Toby Keith back to life for a moment with her 16-minute speech. With her words, "We didn't just remember Toby as a superstar, but as a father, songwriter, and patriot. And most of all, the husband who loved one woman fiercely and faithfully for more than 40 years. Toby's son, Steelin Keith Koval, also spoke up about how wonderful his father was. He said that his father's induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame was always something on a checklist of a lot of things that he knew he was going to accomplish in his life. He added that he received the news while he was with his mom, and that the moment was a bittersweet one, saying, "We all know he deserved it. We're happy he's in here, and we're excited for him." Even though Toby Keith is no longer here in the flesh, his legacy is still blazing strong. Through his music, his patriotism, and most importantly, through the OK Kids Chorale, the cancer foundation he launched to support children battling the same disease that eventually took his life. Toby's heart keeps beating in every life he touched. He may be gone, but he'll never be forgotten. Now tell us, what's your favorite Toby Keith memory, lyric, or moment? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss the next deep dive into your favorite celebrity secrets.